Good morning and welcome to the Trader Planet Pre-Market Open Trade Review. Today is Wednesday, May 5th. We're happy to have you with us today. This is Darla Tuttle, your host for today's session with Greg Firman, a market analyst for TraderPlanet.com. Today's webcast takes place at a specific date and time, and therefore any opinions given by our presenter may change without notice at any time. Please be aware that trading involves substantial risk of loss and therefore may not be suitable for all investors, and past performance is not indicative of future results. This live webcast is being recorded and will be posted on Trader Planet, so you will be able to review the material at a later time. You will also find additional previously recorded webinars among our other free educational resources within the site at www.TraderPlanet.com. As one of our more revered Forex educators, Greg Firman is a professional trader and commodity trade advisor that has worked in the stock, futures, commodity, and currency markets for the last 10 years. Greg is Series 3 commodity futures licensed and registered with the NFA and has clients that include individual traders and fund managers from around the world. We're delighted to have him with us today. Let's give a warm welcome to Greg Firman.
Hello, Darla, and thank you for that warm welcome. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming this morning to view this presentation. Now, what we're going to be looking at this morning, we're going to be looking at a number of different currency pairs, excuse me, in the foreign exchange market. Now, unfortunately this morning here, we're pretty much caught in a breakout on a number of different currency pairs. Excuse me. So what we're looking at to get things going, we're going to pull up the VantagePoint software. We're going to see what's happening with this US dollar index based around that Forex market outlook for the week. Now, looking at this, we can see that essentially on Sunday I talked about the US dollar. We have this triple EMA crossover that's taken place. I suggested that this is going to continue to move higher. Now, the Greece situation is certainly helping things out, but the reality is the US dollar index, again, has been in a buy formation, an upward trend since probably November. So again, it's important that we look at all of these things, and even though we have this this complete and utter mess this morning in Greece, the reality is the trend was still in place, and we were able to identify that using the VantagePoint software and get into some very good positions. Now, by good positions, what I'm suggesting is buying US dollars throughout the different currency pairs. That means selling Euro US, buying US Swiss franc, selling Australia US, selling New Zealand US. But we don't want to take a number of these trades all at once, because reality is, so everybody understands, the foreign exchange market is largely based around buying and selling US dollars. So when we have these G7 currency pairs or G20 currency pairs, that essentially is a currency pair that is based with the US dollar. So US CAD, Australia US, US Swiss franc, things like that. So let's have a look at this morning what's happening here. Now, we've got this triple EMA crossover that's made its move again. I've thrown a number of indicators up here on the screen so everybody can see. What I want to point out here is this 81 level. We got this crossover to the downside. The triple EMA crossover tried to make that move, but has subsequently pulled up higher. We've based out around just above this 80 level, and now we're pushing higher. We can see that yesterday we closed at 83.29. The market currently is aggressively moving higher on the US dollar index. On the recommended trades for Monday night, I suggested that crude oil was going to sell off. That absolutely happened. We've had a vicious move lower on crude oil. That's translated into another recommended trade that I had, which was the US-Canadian pair. I suggested buying that, and looking at the correlation and doing the analysis using the VantagePoint software, I was able to make that determination. Now, it did help me that I had other modules of VantagePoint, but the reality is the US-Canada pair using the software still took the oil into consideration. I just like that added security. So for right now, we can base out on the US dollar index at 81.66. That's our 18-day predicted moving average. These predicted moving averages can only be found on the VantagePoint software. That's why I'm using this program in most of my presentations. You'll see that I'm only really using the VantagePoint, because right now I'm pretty much using that as a standalone indicator, other than just basic charts that I can get free from the broker. So for now, let's have a look. We're going to pop up the market here and let's see what's going on in the foreign exchange market. We can also here, using the FXCM trade station, we can also look at cash for different CFDs. So what that is, that's the S&P 500, crude oil, gold, all of these things. So right now, this morning I've entered into one position. Usually on my webinars, I'll enter into a position while we're trading. We are going to do that today, but just let's do a quick look at what I've entered in yesterday. Now, I've got two positions here on US Canada, both 50,000 each. Point out here, everybody can see this hopefully okay, $44,000 in the account, so I'm not over leveraged on this at all. I'm not even really leveraged at all, other than about 2 to 1. So we can see that our trades from yesterday, I've bought the US Canada at 101.94, 101.97. We can see that the trades are up $559 on the first trade, $556 on the second trade. Now for this morning, just for the sake of doing our presentation, I've entered into a short position on the New Zealand US dollar. So the New Zealand US dollar is somewhat of it's a little more volatile, I think, right now than what the US CAD. The US CAD is moving up. We can see the crude oil prices. I suggested that we sell the crude oil just above the 86 level, between 86 and 87. We're now sitting at 79. That's a fantastic trade, a good call that I was able to make using the Vantage Point software. I'll run through that in a few moments, but for now, let's identify what we're looking at here for today. So we've got New Zealand US sitting at 71.54. So let's go into the Vantage Point. We've entered this trade. We can see that I entered this trade just before the start of the webinar at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. Now, we're going to pull this up just so everybody can see this, and then I will go through the US Canada pair also. Now again, the market's going to be, excuse me, quite volatile this morning with Greece and everything that's happening. Hopefully we're not going to see any serious whipsaws here, but anything is possible. So looking at the New Zealand US dollar, what we can see here, we can identify critical levels of pivot, what I would call, again, pivot resistance. Pivot resistance using the predicted moving averages only from Vantage Point. They come in at 72.32, 72.13, and 71.71. So you can see that I've entered into that short position based on the fact that the market is below these moving averages. Now, for people out there that don't understand what the basis of a moving average is, well, a moving average, the theory behind this, guys, is that when you're in a position, if you're below the moving average, the market is below the moving average, you're short, and if the market's above the moving average, you're long. Now, a lot of bigger traders and that, they'll stretch this out to 50-day moving averages, 200-day moving averages. They'll stretch it way out, trying to get the lag out of the market, trying to determine major levels of support and resistance, all of which, you know, tend to be lagging. Now, using the Vantage Point predicted moving averages, I'm able to get the majority of the lag out of that. That's key. Now, by doing this, we can see here the 3-day predicted moving average from Vantage Point comes in at 72.32. Now, if we come up here and have a look at the market, we can see the high today is 72.21. Well, to be perfectly honest, guys, it's not a coincidence. This happens on a day-to-day basis. I've noticed with this program, there's a number of other different ways we can use it, but first and foremost thing, we want to identify which way to trade this, and then we want to identify an entry point, and it doesn't matter whether it's a short, a medium, or long-term view. You have to identify where is an area that potentially is going to be a problem. So in this particular case, entering this position, somebody could say, well, you know, you've sold it at the